So let's drag the sources folder, hit Command Tab to find it, drag it into the project window, but before you release it, hold down the Option key. That ensures that you get a folder and not a series of images. We could go into that later. Now you need to click here. This will be apparent later. Next you'll make a new composition. All of the files have to go into composition, and After Effects does not automatically create a composition. So you need to go down to this little strange looking button down here, click it, name your composition, name it your last name, first name, and then C01 because it's the first in-class exercise. Set it to the preset HDTV 1080-24. 1080 is the size of the image, that is 1080 pixels high, and 24 frames per second. You don't need to touch anything else except down here, the duration. Just select the 30 and type in 05. That makes it 5 seconds long. This is hours, this is minutes, this is seconds, and that's frames. Hit OK, and you have a new composition. So let's drag some of the sources into the composition. First, select the cake ingredients and drag that onto the left half of the timeline right here. And you'll see that it appears in the comp window. Dragging it to the left side here ensures that the layer will start in time at 0 at the beginning of the composition. It also ensures that the layer is centered in at 100% size in the composition. But we don't want it 100% size right now, so grab a corner, scale it down. Now you want to constrain the proportions, so hit the Shift button and it will pop into a constrained state. So remember, it's drag it first and then hit Shift and then move it into a position like this. Now the next one, the cake tin, we'll drag that onto the comp window as well, but note that you can drag it anywhere into the comp window like that. And now because we dragged it into the comp window, that one also starts at 0 in time. Let's shrink that one down by grabbing it and then hitting Shift so it snaps into constrained position, and we want to put it, say, here. Now our next layer will be the oven. Drag that one down into the bottom right area, and you'll see that you'll have a little current time indicator that follows you at the top of the timeline. That tells you where or when in time the layer will be ending up. We want somewhere around, let's make it 1, 2, 3 seconds around here. So you see, the layer starts at 3 seconds. But we can't see it because we are viewing what the whole composition would look like at 0. So let's drag ourselves forward to 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. There it is. So we're around 3 seconds. There's the oven. Now we can see it. So let's drag that and scale it down. And hold down Shift. It snaps in. And let's put it around here. Now for our last one, we'll drag the cake done from the project window onto the timeline. Only this time let's drag it to the right of the current time indicator. And there it is. Okay, so let's again scale it down by dragging, then holding Shift, maybe here, and then drag it over there. Now you have all 4 layers in the composition window. Now let's hit the space bar in order to preview the composition. As you'll see the time. That red line indicates the time that we are viewing. That indicates the frame that we're viewing the composition at. As the red line moves forward in time, the movie is playing. And you'll see that each time the red line hits the beginning of a layer, it appears. That's how After Effects plays back layers in time. Now let's say that's not exactly what we want. Let's say that we want to see first the ingredients, then the cake tin, then the oven, then the cake, and at some reasonable even timing. So we can grab the layers while the playback is happening. So what's our first layer? Our first layer is the cake ingredients, which is over here. We can move that to start at around 1 second. So you see when 1 second goes by, that appears. We can do this while the playback is happening. This is pretty cool. This is a newer feature in After Effects. The next one will be the cake tin. So we select that over here and we drag it so that the beginning of the layer is at about the left edge is at about 2 seconds. Boom. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's make sure that the others are lined up. That's at about 3 seconds. Let's make the cake at about 4 seconds. No, once I started dragging the current time indicator, the preview stopped. So, oh, by the way, if you want the start of a layer to snap to where the current time indicator is, start dragging the layer, then hit Shift, and when it gets close to it, it snaps like that. Let's hit the space bar again. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's how After Effects plays layers sequentially. As the red line moves forward in time during a preview playback, each time it hits the beginning or the left edge of a layer, that layer appears. Now, conversely, we could do the same thing by moving the right end of a layer to make a layer disappear. We won't do that just yet. We'll do that later. So the next thing that we will do is because let's hit spacebar to stop it. If you've got, 500 layers and they're all organized in this fashion, it might be hard to figure out the comp. You want to be able to read it in the timeline very quickly. Basically, you want to work quickly, do all the simple things quickly so that you can spend the rest of your time thinking, or you get out early and go to the pub. So just to make this easier to read, let's order the layers in space, top to bottom, according to when they appear in time. Personally, I like having the first layer at the bottom of the layer stack. It's just the way that I like to work. You can have the first layer in time appear at the bottom or the top. That just depends on how you like to work. So our first layer is this one. That's the cake ingredients. Let's just drag the name. There we go. I drag this little bar here to make sure that the column is in the right spot to make it visible. So cake ingredients, let's drag the name down to the bottom. What's the next one? That's the cake tin. Drag that one just above it. The next one is the oven. So now you see this layer stack is easy to read. If you go up, you go to the right. See? This one, then that one, then this one, then that one. Easier to read. You can read a comp very quickly. You eventually get to be like Tank in the Matrix, he said optimistically. So let's push the space bar. Now nothing's really changed. If some of these layers were overlapping, you might see some kind of a change in one layer appearing above the other or not, but not in this case. So pretty much we're ready to render now. Let's just hit the space bar. But I just remembered something. Before we render, let's change the colors of these. You can change the color of each layer. It doesn't actually affect what happens in here. It only affects what happens in the timeline. You do this for organization. Sometimes you want all your sound layers to be one color, all of your Illustrator files to be another color, all of your movies to be another color, type to be another color. That just helps you organize things. To do that, you click over here in the little color box and you pick a color. Let's pick red for the first one. There we go. For the next one, let's pick yellow. For the third one, the oven, let's try aqua. And then for the cake, done. Oh, let's try orange. Yeah, okay. So this will help you organize, knowing that you can do this. When you get a really big composition with a lot of layers, you want to do this sort of thing. Now we've adjusted the timing of the layers. That's fine. So if we like what we've got, let's render it. Now this is how you make a movie. What we've got right now is basically a series of commands inside After Effects that tell us how to play back stuff inside After Effects. If we want to show this to somebody else outside of After Effects, we need to make a movie. So let's go to Composition. Make sure that your composition is selected, by the way. If you are here, this project window is selected, and you don't want that. You want to be either in the timeline or in the composition. In order to select Composition, add to Adobe Media Encoder Q. And you might expect Adobe Media Encoder to pop up, ready to go, but it doesn't seem to be happening that way. So let's hit Command-Tab to go and look for the Adobe Media Encoder. There it is. Okay. Now let's make sure that we've got our settings right. This is the window we care about at first. You know, you can do more fancy stuff over here later, but right now we just care about the Q. This is our composition, Roberts Steve C01. Our format, H.264, that's what we want. If you don't have it, you would look for it here. Okay. Our preset should be match source, high bitrate. There's a lot of other presets. We won't go into those right now. And your output file. This is where your file will go. It is by default the same name as your composition. This is why I prefer that you name your composition the same name as the eventual movie that you've got. It just saves you having to rename it later. It keeps everything straight. Also, if you, years later, want to go back into the project and find the composition that gave you this movie, you can find it very easily. This is very true when you work with a lot of compositions, a lot of layers, and a lot of projects. Keep things named the same so that you can trace them back. I hope that makes sense. Anyway, click on the output file name here just to make sure it's going to the right spot. By default, it goes to Untitled Project AME. We don't really want that. Instead, we want to go to, where do I have that nowadays? I want to go on to the desktop, and I want to go to Camtasia Centennial and to Robert Steve C01. Now, in that Robert Steve folder, let's make a new folder, call it Renders. I like to use all caps. I'm crazy that way. Hit Create, and in that folder called Renders, you will have Robert Steve C01 MP4. You hit Save, and you're ready to go. So you hit the green arrow to start the render queue. If you look down at the bottom, you'll see the progress of the render. And this is your movie down here as it renders. And you're done. Hit Command-Tab to go back to the Finder. Then under Renders, you should see the movie. Click on it and play it. Okay, you've just made a movie in After Effects.